think I can speak for many of us when I say that we did not just get on a motorcycle and we were able to ride without any challenges whatsoever. None of us began as an expert rider. Now, maybe there are a few of you that did just that, but I think that you would be the exception to the rule. I think back to when I started riding. Now, I didn't just go out and get the biggest motorcycle I could find, despite the fact that my 6'8" frame really needed that. I began on a 2000 Harley-Davidson Sportster, and I treated it with a certain reverence and trepidation. I wasn't about to just jump on and take off. I first began by riding around a parking lot, very slowly, often putting my foot down when I made a turn. Eventually, I went out onto some less traveled roads and worked on trying to get comfortable riding the speed limit, learning about the motorcycle as I went. Finally, after about 4 or 5 months, I took my first adventure into the real world, with my wife driving her car behind me. Now, I rode for just over an hour. Winding roads, a parkway, and some more winding roads. At the conclusion of that ride, my wife said that it was painful for her because I was going a little too slow. Now, the return trip, to my surprise, was much quicker and more comfortable for me. At some point, there had been a breakthrough, and I had grown a little bit more as a rider. Now, this growth continued for quite a while, and before I knew it, I was on a 750-mile round-trip ride to Maggie Valley, North Carolina. That trip resulted in me upgrading to the Street Glide that I now ride, which is much better suited to my size. Now, I've ridden the Tail of the Dragon at least 6 or 7 times, made a road trip to New Orleans, and I've ridden in the bitter cold, blazing heat, and torrential downpours. Could I have done all of this when I first started? Absolutely not. The point is this: riding a motorcycle is a process. You don't start out as an experienced rider, but the truth is that we could continue to improve and develop as riders the more time that we spend out on the roads. This idea turns me to a $10 word that many Christians throw around without ever really understanding or being able to explain what it means. And that word is sanctification. Now, before we dive into this, let's briefly just hit on salvation. At the moment of our salvation, we are immediately justified. This is entirely the work of God, and it's the exact same for every single one of us. In that instant, we are justified into a right standing before the King of Kings. But what's next? Is that it? Are we now experienced Christians ready to take on the world? The answer is no. It's just like jumping on a motorcycle and knowing immediately how to ride. It's just not happening. You need time, practice, patience, and perseverance. This is the heart of the process that is known as sanctification. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure. Our sanctification is a process that we endure every single day of our lives, following that glorious moment of salvation. Sanctification is continuous. It never ceases during our lives on this earth. We will never attain perfection. So it is actually detrimental to our growth when we make that our focus, because we will fall short every time, and then we may become discouraged. We should continue to work towards growth and to understand that this growth is different for each one of us. We should never compare ourselves to each other. This brings me to my other point. My sanctification will look much different from yours. We each came to salvation at different periods in our lives and under a myriad of circumstances, but we are on the same journey. It's just that we're at different mile markers on the path. And speaking of that path, it actually is a rather straightforward path, but we as humans make it a little more challenging than it should be. And so why is that? Well, it's because our lives before salvation were mired in sin. And now we're striving to remove that sin nature from our lives. Again, let's turn to Paul in his letter to the Romans. I am speaking in human terms because of your natural limitations. For just as you once presented your members as slaves to impurity and to lawlessness, leading to more lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, leading to sanctification. Our responsibility as Christians is to grow as Christians, to follow this process of sanctification. Previously, before our salvation, we were growing in sin. Now the roles have changed. Our focus has changed. We are setting our sights on things of God, not the sinful desires of the world around us. But we don't do so nonchalantly, just hoping that things will happen. You see, we at one time pursued sin with great vigor and excitement. Now we are called to pursue righteousness with even greater vigor and incitement. I think the words of Christ summarize this idea very succinctly. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." We're also encouraged by James in this regard. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Our salvation, coupled with this process of sanctification, gives us power over our sin. But it does not guarantee that our lives will be free of sin. Actually, I don't know of a single verse in the Bible that promises us a sinless life. Now, there are plenty of verses that clearly indicate that we will never live a completely moral, sinless life on this earth. Surely, there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Even Jesus, in teaching his disciples, indicates that our lives still will deal with sin. We see the Lord's Prayer recorded in Matthew and in Luke. In the English Standard Version, Luke's recording of this prayer contains these words: "Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, for we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us, and lead us not into temptation." Why would Jesus teach his disciples to seek forgiveness for sin if they were to live a completely sinless life? The point is this: we are not to let sin be the ruler in our lives. Unfortunately, it will still creep in, but we must fight it daily. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body to make you obey its passions. You see, we're going to battle sin every single day of our lives, and there will be moments that it may overtake us. But it's our response to that sin that is so vital to our sanctification. Do we let it consume us and bring us down? Or do we turn our back on it and seek God's guidance on how to overcome the sin that has slipped by us? It will happen, make no mistake. But we must be vigilant and ready to fight it every single day. Stay the course, follow the process, and pick yourself up when you stumble. It gets easier with each passing moment because you are becoming more like Christ when your faith is living and active. That sweet day will come when we are glorified and perfection is complete. It just takes time, perseverance, and prayer. And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ.